Welcome to the beginning of Montober. This year we're kicking things off with Stephen King's Salem's Lot, a story which follows the author Ben Mears returning to the town for the first time since childhood to write a book. His inspiration was a traumatic experience that happened to him in the Marsden house, the town's ghost house, so to speak. What it is, not going to say. If you haven't read the book, read the book. It's very interesting. It's creepy. And at the same time, two other people move into town and people start dying. The book begins very interestingly. We meet two characters. We get a lot of information pretty quick. They're not related. They come from a town called Jerusalem's Lot that's now a ghost town. They're both haunted by what happens. And it's a nice little foundation that you want to know what was so traumatic. What happened? Why is this town a ghost town? And we find out. The characters in this book are all good. They serve their purpose. You get to see some of what would later become themes in Stephen King's book. Like, we see some of the beginning, although no one's as horrifying as the monsters in this book, the people in this world are really horrible. We meet a character who's married at 17, has an infant son, and she's being abused by her husband, but you can't really feel sorry for her because we see she passes that abuse on to her infant son. There's a character having an affair, and the town kept its secrets, and the Marsden house brooded over it like a ruined king, and we get to see some of those secrets. This is a book just as much about the people in the town as it is about the vampire. The people that move into the Marsden house are Strucker and Barlow. Strucker is the daytime guardian of the vampire Barlow, and Barlow is a very well-written, terrifying character. He's essentially Dracula without being called Dracula. He's lived for thousands of years, outsmarted countless would-be assassins, and he's an elegant speaker. Barlow in this book will talk to people, and he'll basically convince them you want to be a vampire without telling them he's going to bite them and turn them into a vampire. And they just let him feed and turn him. The vampires in this are really well done too. With the exception of Barlow, and all the vampires do have sentience, they're aware of who they are and who they were in their past life. But we also find out some of the other functions aren't as astute. They're not as aware because they're fledgling vampires and they're not at the level Barlow is. And the vampires in this are really more like vermin, where they're the rats living in your basement. They could be sleeping under a pile of leaves or in your attic, and they're really terrifying vampires. And they spread like vermin. The town does, once things kick up, the town very quickly becomes overrun. And it is well done, but that being said, it also makes you care about these characters to the point where you do kind of push the beginning where you know things aren't going to go well for most people in this book in the back of your head, because it's written in such a way that you just go along for the ride. And how some of them meet their end is pretty horrific. There's one character who falls into a booby trap, and that's probably worse than being torn apart by the vampires, how he goes out. In this book, I don't scare easy, but this thing creeped me out at times. I know everyone likes to point to the scene where the Gillespie boy vampire is tapping on Mark's window is the most terrifying scene. I respectfully disagree. There were two scenes that freaked me out more. Most specifically, the one with Father Callahan, who neither version of the movie properly touched on what happened to him. In the 2004 version, he becomes a servant of Barlow. In the 70s version, in both versions, Barlow still forces him to drink his blood, but in the 70s version, we don't see what happened to him after that. What really happened is, if you're forced to drink vampire blood, you're now cursed. Father Callahan can't return back to his church, and when he tries to open the door, he gets knocked back. He goes to leave town, and as he buys a ticket out of town, the lady who works at the drugstore, she realizes how quiet it's been all night, unnaturally quiet, in that Father Callahan's the first person she has seen all night. And she immediately gets terrified. She's telling him, "You have to leave the store now. The owner wouldn't like people waiting in here." And he's urging her, you live out of town, close up, get in your car, don't stop for no one, and don't come back. And Father Callahan, I said you have to leave. Please leave. And it's a really tense, terrifying scene where nothing really happens other than one character warning the other to leave and the other being freaked out and telling him, you can't be here. In the other scene, there's a character that gets turned much later on in the book, and later on that night, she's tapping at the boy Mark's window, asking to be let in, but the dialogue of what she says and the subtext of what she's saying makes it more terrifying. I'm not going to say what that dialogue and subtext is. You're going to have to read the book. And it just keeps ramping up. It's the first two murders are a dog and two kids. The dog, we find out there's an in-universe vampire lore reason why the dog might have been killed. One of the kids becomes the town's first vampire and starts turning other people, starting with the gravedigger. And it just builds up, and more people start turning into these vermin-like vampires until by the end, pretty much the whole town has been turned into vampires. And it really, the last handful of chapters are just breakneck pace. You want to know what happens. How do they stop him? There's even a creepy scene at one point where they come back after one of the vampires has been staked, and one of the characters picks up the teeth, and they're still like shaking in his hand like the teeth are reacting to his blood, and he throws the teeth. King really created a creepy, more menacing type vampire that wouldn't be surpassed until Guillermo del Toro created The Strain. The Strigoi take the vermin aspect of how vampires are in this book and just crank it up to 50. But this book, it's probably my third favorite of the King stories I've read. It's great characters, well written, fast paced. King don't pull no punches with this book. It's brutal as it needs to be, when it needs to be, and it takes its time to build. Again, some people may call it a slow burn. I completely disagree. This book, I just couldn't put it down once I got into it. Granted, with me, I'm like a very slow reader. I might read 2 pages and put it down for a while, come back, read a half a page and put it down. Until I actually get into a book, it is like a chore to read it, but once I got into it, I was wanting to get more and more out of it, and I wanted to finish it. But yeah, Stephen King's Salem's Lot, I would give an A plus. I got another Stephen King book coming up this month. But have you read the book or seen either one of the miniseries? If you've just seen the films, I recommend the book. It's a much more intense experience and it will creep you out. So don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and next I'm going to follow up with another book review. Stephen King again, Cycle of the Werewolf. I reviewed the movie Silver Bullet last year. Couldn't get the book because the library was I didn't have time to make a appointment at the library because of pandemic restrictions. I can go in any time now, but I've purchased a copy of the book, so there's that. As for the films, I haven't fully decided yet, and as you can see, I've made an intro at the beginning of this video. I hope y'all like the intro. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Over and out. Okay, I forgot to give 2 recommendations I meant in the review if you like Salem's Lot, but Jerusalem's Lot and One for the Road. Jerusalem's Lot is a prequel that shows that there was an evil in this town long before the Marsden House was even built, and small towns have long memories and pass their horrors down ceremoniously from generation to generation. You will find that out in Jerusalem's Lot. You can actually look for the audiobook here on YouTube. And One for the Road, which is a very short story that makes a great epilogue to Salem's Lot about a family traveling who happens to go through the town at nighttime and their car gets stuck in a snowdrift. The book, it's chilling, it's creepy, it has a foreboding atmosphere and just keeps ramping up the tension. So there you have it. Definitely check those 2 out.